Hey guys, my guest tonight, Brandon Massullo, is going to be talking about cutting-edge research and theories in the paranormal. We'll be right back. Grab your popcorn and snacks. Find a comfy spot, take a seat or lie down, and let me transport you to a place of fantasy, ghost stories, ancient legends, odd creatures, alien encounters, and other magical topics. You may even decide to join the conversation. From faraway lands to your own backyard, with a small dash of pixie dust. Turn out the lights and open your minds. The journey is about to begin. Good evening, everybody. How's everybody doing? I think I heard everybody go, terrific. One more day, right? Friday's tomorrow. Boom, boom, boom. My name is Charlotte. I'm going to be your host for the next hour. I'm also the owner of the California Haunts Paranormal Investigation Team based out of Sacramento, California. We are 45 strong up and down the state, which means if you have a paranormal need or you think you might have a paranormal need, we are available to you and we can get you. It might take us a couple days because California is this huge state. People don't realize how big a state it is. But it's a huge state. But we will. We will get there to you. And in the case that it might take us 2 or 3 days to get there, we do have mediums on staff who could talk with you. We can call you and do remote reads and talk with you about what may or may not be going on. And in some cases, if it is, if they deem it paranormal, they can calm the energy down for you. Okay, that being said, you can find us Facebook. Just Google us on social media. You'll find us. Okay. One quick announcement for the Patreon members. I will have a video for you, a fresh video for you, extra video for you tomorrow evening, and that'll be available to you for the next week and a half, so you can check that out. And I'm going to be doing the pre-record tomorrow at 10 a.m., so I should have it up no later than 2 p.m. over at the Patreon for you. Okay, just want to let you guys know. Okay. If you guys are watching from Facebook, and a lot of you are, please feel free to of course, if you like what you see, please feel free to hit that follow button because we're trying to build up our following. And also, Jerry, hello, and also comment and chit-chat amongst yourselves in the chat room, and show us some love today. Show us some love. Give us a thumbs up. Give us a happy heart thing, just to show us some love, because what that does is, it works the same way all the way across the boards for social media. What that does is it puts us into the notice of the master computers, which is what they call the FYP, right? And so the FYP is the thing where we're suggested to other people to be watched. So that's what that does. So it's real simple, okay? Works that way even over at YouTube. Now YouTube's a wholly different animal for me. I have over over 1,200 videos over there. It's all of this show for the last 5 years, and we've done different shows because I'm a journalist, photojournalist, so I like to change it up. So when you go over there, you're going to see a lot of different things, including a lot of paranormal, but still, there's other topics. Same thing over there. If you haven't subscribed already and you like what you see tonight, feel free to subscribe. Always building up. Twitch, same thing over there, okay? And the likes and all that good stuff. Hello, Pamela. Okay, my guest tonight, Brandon Massullo. Hope I said his name correctly. You guys know how I am with names. I'm fascinated with this because I've noticed, in the last few years, doing this for 18 years like I have, things change. Theories change. There's always people that are really studying this stuff. I mean, I study it as well because that's what we do. I mean, I have big filing cabinets in the back here with all our cases, and I'm able to go back. I go to a certain case, and I'm able to go back and look something up that might be similar, and to see if there's a compare contrast. So you're always looking for different things to make your studies of this better, right? Well, Brandon has done that, and so we're going to be talking to him tonight about some of the more cutting edge stuff and the new theories. And that poltergeist, that was something that has changed a lot too, is what with those theories about poltergeist and what causes them what they do. Anyway, I want to shut up and I want to bring Brandon on and let him tell you about himself, and then we're going to get into this. Okay, here we go. Hello, sir.
Hi.
How you doing?
Well, I'm well. How about yourself?
I'm good. Tell me.
All right.
Yeah, tell me about you.
Oh gosh. Well, I I never know where to start with that question. I I have a bachelor's degree in psychology and a master's degree in clinical counseling, and I also have what they call an uh, MSc in psychological research methods
Mm-hmm.
with a specialization in parapsychology from the University of Edinburgh. Basically, it's like a master's degree.
Right.
Um, so I have about 20 years experience, a little over 20 years experience in the mental health clinical world.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and my when I did my research in parapsychology, that's sort of what I'm known for, at least on these types of shows, like my
Mm-hmm.
ghost research, if you want to say about that.
Sure.
Um,
Sure.
so I was always fascinated with psychology, and then parapsychology, which is basically, for those of you who might not know what parapsychology is, it's the field of study concerned with the investigation of paranormal and psychic phenomena. So this
Mm-hmm.
includes telepathy, precognition, clairvoyance, psychokinesis, or moving stuff with the mind, near-death experiences, reincarnation, and of course our favorite, apparitional experience.
Mm-hmm.
So parapsychology is actually the scientific study of interaction, um, living organisms, and the external environment that kind
Mm-hmm.
of transcend physical laws of nature. Uh, what people don't know is there's actually academic departments that are devoted to parapsychology. University of Edinburgh is one of those places where they have a whole department devoted to it. And University of Edinburgh is the top 25 university in the world, where they cloned sheep in Bali in the 90s. Charles Darwin went there. So it's a pretty legitimate university. So I went there for a little while. I was fascinated with ghosts, and I did my research there. And then I came back here to the states and did some more clinical stuff. And then I started writing. I wrote a book called Ghost Studies.
Mm-hmm.
I published, co-authored, published peer-reviewed journals on haunted houses, what they call gestalt influences, which is how the environment affects us. So I've
Mm-hmm.
always been fascinated by why do certain people have all these ghost encounters and why do others have none? And then why are
Mm-hmm.
some locations haunted and have all these experiences and other locations have none? That's kind of been my focus over the last
Mm-hmm.
uh, year.
Your mic is kind of fading out from time
What
to
is
time. Yeah, it's kind of fading out from time to time. Your mic.
like
See, I can barely hear you right now.
Oh, let me see if I can turn the volume up.
Okay.
Maybe.
Okay.
Let
Yeah.
me see
Maybe.
that.
Could be the internet connection too.
All right, is that higher?
Yeah. We'll see how it goes for a few minutes here.
Yeah.
Well, well, tell me, how does one research the paranormal? I mean, there's books that go way back, to the 1800s. If you go back looking at those guys, right? That did the original studies. But how does one research, stuff for the paranormal?
Well, there's a number of ways you can do it. Obviously, you can go back and you could read research journal articles.
Mm-hmm.
You can go back to the 1800s with the books. The Society for Psychical Research was one of the first
Mm-hmm.
organizations that actually studied ghosts. Always you could always become a member of the Society for Psychical Research and have access to all those records as well. Um, but I mean, that's really where you start when it comes to ghosts.
Mm-hmm.
At least for me, that's where I started reading journal articles, past stuff, current books. A lot of people are kind of scared sometimes of academic research, but it's actually
Mm-hmm.
not that hard to read or understand. It might sometimes I always say just have a dictionary next to you in case you got to look up a word or do that. I still have a dictionary next to me too when I do it. So
Right.
um, but that's really where you start with researching ghosts, and then you kind of take it out in the field after that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's a lot of what they call field investigation research out there, uh, and there's a lot of journal articles on that, like EMFs, infrasound. Uh, there's a lot of academic research on that out there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. In the years that you've been researching, what trends have you seen?
As far as with ghosts,
Yeah, and investigating.
investigating ghosts.
Yeah.
Uh, Wow. Actually, there's not that many trends. It seems
Mm-hmm.
like electromagnetic fields have always been sort of there in the background, at least since the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I think around the 2000s, early 2000s, infrasound was very big. And infrasound is basically this, there's this noise that's going on around us that we can't really hear, so it's below the hearing level,
Mhm.
but somehow that impacts our brain, it impacts sort of our eyes, and it could cause people to think that they are seeing ghosts or having a sense of presence, those types of things. That was pretty big in the 2000s. Um, there's been always this talk about how mold impacts people, uh, and there's a lot of other what we call environmental influences or variables that have
Mhm.
always been around as well. So you see those trends like EMF, it's popular for a while, then it goes away, and then it kind of comes
Mhm.
back. Electricity and ghosts, infrasound, all these types of things are really out there. EVPs have been around for a long time too. So it's not like we're finding new stuff. Uh, Ion counts, all these types of things are always really out there.
Mhm.
So I think right now, as far as research goes, we're kind of looking at correlating like environmental changes with paranormal phenomenon. So it's
Mhm.
not like you go out and find a ghost, but if you have someone saying, "Oh, I see a ghost," and then you notice that like EMF changes in the room, like there's a
Mhm.
fluctuation or a decrease, or if an object moves, like a ball moves by itself, and you notice changes in the environment. So it's more
Mhm.
about correlating those types of things than it is
Mhm.
about actually taking a picture of a ghost or seeing a ghost. Um, so that's sort of the more recent trend, I would say.
Mhm. 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 And as far as things like as I talked about the intro poltergeist activity, because I've noticed, it's expanded from what it once was. Because everybody said, well, it's activity for it's somebody being upset, not being able to calm down afterwards. They go to bed, and then all of a sudden stuff starts moving around. But recently, I've heard different explanations for it.
Yeah, poltergeist. I think what you're talking about is like that. Um, they call it RSPK, recurrent
Mhm.
spontaneous psychokinesis. That's the
Mhm.
idea that uh, it's not like a discarnate entity or a ghost that's moving objects. It comes from internal, like us, like the Carey
Right.
hypothesis, where you have someone who's overwhelmed psychologically, and then somehow they're interacting with the environment and they're able to move objects and kind of throw stuff around. Um, and you see a lot of phenomenon that goes on, like ghost haunt type phenomenon is very it's varied,
Mhm.
right? It could be um, objects moving, it could be apparitions, it could be cold spots, it could be all these types of things. So
Mhm.
RSPK, which is recurrent, meaning it happens often, spontaneous meaning there's no control over it, and PK meaning psychokinesis, which is mind over matter.
Mhm.
That has been a popular theory for a long time, and most parapsychologists kind of lean into that one at least. They don't think that like there's not really a difference between poltergeists and hauntings more or less because they're
Mhm.
kind of overlapped and mixed together. So when you look at it, you think, well, maybe this RSPK or psychokinesis could account for a lot of paranormal phenomenon. And then there's others in the camp who think that those types of things are more like discarnate entities who are moving objects like the poltergeist movies. Um, so it kind of goes both ways. Most of the research that I read kind of will start with it's internal, caused by psychokinesis, like moving
Mhm.
objects with your mind.
Mhm.
Um, it's hard to really tell. I mean, you know how it is. I mean, you
Yeah.
investigated a lot of houses. It's so complicated to come up with one answer to explain everything. Sometimes it's just a mixture of different things, right? So why can't
Right.
you have recurrent spontaneous psychokinesis with telepathy, with a
Mhm.
discarnate entity? You know what I'm saying? It's
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
trying to pull an ingredient out of a pasta sauce. Sometimes once it's in the pasta sauce, you can't pull that ingredient right back out.
Right. Right.
You
Right.
know, it's all one thing, so it's hard
Mhm.
to really find that out.
Mhm. Mhm. I've heard stories also of people being able to send poltergeist activity to someone else's home. Inadvertently do it.
Yeah, there's a lot of they used to call it. I don't know if they probably still call it this. Is this idea of um, sort of like astral projection in a way, where if you
Mhm.
think really hard, you could send an image of yourself across town to someone else.
Mhm.
Um, I haven't really read anything about people doing that, like with objects moving, so I'm not sure which one you're referring to. I mean, that's a fascinating
Yeah, I
case
saw
study.
something on one of the silly programs. I'm talking like
Oh, okay.
I'm talking like no, I'm not talking like Ghost Adventures or any of that. But you know what? Like it might have been In Search of, or it might have been one of those older programs where
Okay.
this woman was for some reason was able to send whatever was going on with her over to this other woman's house. That's what I was asking about.
Yeah, I remember there was a study way back where a
Mhm.
guy um, uh, pretty much projected an image of himself to no, his wife projected an image to the wife projected an image of herself to her husband on a ship in the middle of the ocean. And what
Wow.
happened was the husband had actually seen the wife walk through the door of the ship. Now the wife is in
Mhm.
New England or something, and he's on a ship in, I don't know, United Kingdom or something, somewhere in the seas
Mhm.
out there. And she concentrates really hard and is able to project an image of himself to this guy on the ship, which seems like it's kind of anecdotal. It's
Mhm.
you know not we hear these stories all the time, but we can't prove them. But it turns out this guy was in a room with another guy, and the guy was there was like bunk beds. So the husband was on one bunk bed, and his roommate was really on the bottom. And the roommate actually saw the wife walk through the door as well. So this idea
Wow.
of someone projecting themselves out across into the ocean, and it's not just seen by one person, but it's seen by two people. Uh,
Right.
so that's kind of an interesting, and there's different like anecdotal cases like that that are out there that are kind of interesting to just think about. So it's almost like telepathy in a way. It's just
Right.
sending, communicating at a distance, but with telepathy, you're not sending or reading people's minds or anything. You're actually projecting an image of yourself, like entanglement. So I thought
Mhm.
those are pretty cool.
Mhm. Mhm. What theories have you seen come to the forefront now? Oh,
Theories as far as ghosts, like what
yeah,
causes ghosts.
ghosts. Yeah, what causes ghosts and things like that.
There, uh, I mean, there really isn't any hardcore theories. There's a lot of thoughts or hypotheses about it.
Mhm.
Um, I think for ghosts, there is a lot of belief that it's some of it is internal, so it's projection type things. I
Mhm.
always, if you read all the way back, there's a book called Phantasms of the Living, which came out, I think, in the late 1800s. And they talked about this thing called vertical hallucinations, which sounds bad, but it's actually just crisis apparitions or telepathy.
Mhm.
Have you ever heard the term crisis apparitions?
I have. Yes.
Hmm. So, for those who may not know, it's when you wake up in the middle of the night and you see um, like your aunt floating above your bed and she says, "Hey, I love you, goodbye." And then you wake up the next morning and find out that your aunt had passed away right when you saw her that night before.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, what you have there is sort of a telepathic distress signal, more or less, sent when she's at her time of death. So, your aunt's about to die. She's got all these emotional disruptions going on in a crisis state. And somehow she sends out a distress signal that's picked up by you telepathically, but it comes in the form of an apparition of her saying goodbye to you. Um,
Mhm.
so that's kind of one of those things that you look at and you'd say, well, that could be a possible explanation for a ghost, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Or a paranormal experience. Um, and then, you know, as far as science goes, no one's really come up with concrete reasons for actual ghosts.
Right.
It's a lot of there could be EMFs messing with your brain. There's a lot of that. Um, infrasound, like we talked about earlier, just
Mhm.
misinterpreting things. But as far as like supernatural causes for it, I don't know if there's anything out there that you could really hang your hat on at this point. We're still so early in it. Like I said before, it's so complicated. When you walk into a location, especially a haunted location, not only do you have all the internal stuff going on with us, so that's all of our like genetics, electricity inside of us, our emotions, all that
Mhm.
stuff is going on here. Plus, we're walking into an environment that's surrounded by um, electromagnetic fields, ions, infrasound. So there's so much just cloudiness going on that it's hard to really pull together an idea of what's going on. So I hope that's not a
No,
disenchanting
no.
answer to
Because I'm
that.
just saying. I
Okay.
mean, do you think they're ever going to figure it out? Because they may never figure it out.
I, like it's so complicated.
Right.
There could be so many things going on at once. I do feel as if we're with technology that's increasing now that
Yeah.
we have these machines that we can carry with us all the time. Eventually, we're going to get to the point where we could actually um, have EKGs on us going 24/7. So the
Mhm.
problem with studying a ghost is you can't really do it in a lab because they're sporadic, they're episodic, they don't happen at will. It's hard to study something in a lab that you don't know where it is, what's happening, and what's going
Right.
on.
Right.
Um, so you almost need to bring the lab with you 24/7, and when you have an encounter, see what happens, right?
Mhm.
So in the future, these things are going to keep increasing to the point where we're going to be able to notice all kinds of things going on in the environment. We're going to be able to notice what's going on with us as far as like EKGs, neuro stuff that's happening. So when somebody
Mhm.
sees a ghost, we're going to get a complete reading of how they're feeling, their brain waves,
Mhm.
all kinds of other data. And I think that's going to really, you're going to start seeing some correlations between things. There was a recent article where, everyone goes into the CT machines for your brain and all that other stuff.
Mhm.
Um, but one guy who went in actually had passed away while he was in there. And that has never really happened before. So when he passed away, they got a lot of information about what happens to the brain when you die. That was
Mhm.
just by happenstance, right? So, because obviously you're not going to have put a kill a person on a CT machine
Right.
just to see
Right.
what it looks like, right?
Right.
So this guy happened to pass away. So when that happens, science is able to now see, oh, this is what's going on with the dying brain. So you
Mhm.
gather information from things like that. But once these things come along and they get more advanced, we're going to have readings from people who are passing away, seeing ghosts,
Mhm.
um, hearing discarnate voices, and I think that's really when uh, we're going to get a little bit more answers about what's going on.
Mhm.
And it's going to be a lot more objective as well. So it's not just going to be, I saw a ghost, believe me. It's going to be, I saw a ghost. And when I saw a ghost, this happened, that happened in the environment. My brain did this. And, you know, visually, sensory, as far as my senses goes, my eyes did see something. So it wasn't made
Mhm.
up. So that's kind of where I think it's going to go. How long it's going to take to get there, I don't know. I mean, who knows in 5 years? I mean, 5 years ago, our I would never imagine our phones can do what they do. So we'll see what
Mhm.
that's like in 10 years, and then
Mhm.
20 and 30, and who knows from 100 years from now. I think a lot of people don't realize that we've been really researching ghosts for oof, at least 3,000 years or so. I mean, I think
Yeah.
maybe 3000 BC was when the first word for ghost was found. So we've been really looking into that ever since then. And,
Mhm.
you know, we haven't really figured it out as you know.
Is there any piece of technology that's being used now that you think is really good?
Um like ghost hunting tech.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think is a great piece of ghost hunting tech?
I think the data loggers are probably the best thing that you can probably do. So data loggers are just boxes that get um, so when you go out with the K2, you have the
Mhm.
K2 in your hand, and the K2 is not really an accurate
Mhm.
device, and it only
Right.
gets EMF meeting readings basically uh, as they're coming in. So you don't get a lot of readout as far as the actual milligauss to it.
Mhm.
You don't know where it's coming from. I think they're single axis, so you don't know if you're picking something. They're flawed in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
Um, but these data loggers that are out there, they can get 90,000 samples in about a minute. So the EMFs that are going on around you.
Mhm.
Um, and you have 90,000 samples or whatever it is. So then you can make a little bit more accurate uh, um, guesses about what's going on in the environment. So data
Mhm.
loggers are great. I think that those are the things. If you're a ghost hunter, you want to get a data logger. You want to learn how to use it, and you also
Mhm.
want to learn how to do the data, um, gather the data for it. So it goes into like an Excel sheet, and then when it goes into an Excel sheet, you could run statistical analysis on it.
Mhm.
So let's say your team goes out and investigates a lot of locations, correct?
Yeah.
So you put a data logger at this location where supposedly there's paranormal experiences happening, and
Mhm.
you just set it out for 6 or 7 hours, and you'll get a readout about what the EMF is in the location. So
Right.
you know when the air conditioner kicks on, it's going to go up a little. You just know this stuff because the data's
Mhm.
like this. Um, so then you go out with your team, and then you know what the baselines are, and then if something paranormal happens, like you ask a ghost to move a beach ball and it actually
Mhm.
moves, then you look at your data and you see where the EMF is. Did
Mhm.
it spike up? Did it spike down? Did it happen right when the ball was moved?
Mhm.
And they call it standard deviation. So this is the normal where it's at. If it's a big jump, it's a big standard deviation or variation from the norm. And then you
Mhm.
can say, well, that's abnormal. That happened right when the beach ball moved. So then
Mhm.
you have this sort of objective
Right.
um, data to back things up. Now, if
Right.
you don't do the statistics and you don't do the baseline, all you have is a beep and a move up. And
Mhm.
that's great. And for an experience, that's a great thing. But, like for you, you have hundreds of cases a year or whatever. If
Mhm.
you do this so often and you gather this information, then uh, that's when science starts taking notice of
Mhm.
things. It's
Mhm.
not just a story. Now it's data that's correlated with an experience
Mhm.
on numerous accounts. So I think data loggers are really a good piece of equipment. And I always tell people, it's like, what do you want to get out of ghost hunting, or why do you go out? Are you looking to just have fun? Are you looking to have an experience? Is it like a spiritual thing for you? Are you looking to just be enchanted, or sort of spiritual in a way that you're looking for answers about what happens after us? If you're going out for reasons like that, don't worry about the toys and the tech and whatnot.
Mhm.
Uh, Sometimes if you're open-minded, you're interested, you're excited, you're really you're in a good mental state to have a ghostly encounter of some kind. So
Mhm.
I always tell people, if that's what you want, do that. Don't worry about all this other mumbo jumbo that comes with it.
Mhm. 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 See, when I take the team out, I'm doing a lot of data logging. We do have a couple
Yep.
data loggers. I'm also at the command center watching the weather. I'm doing
Hmm.
weather spots every 15 minutes to write it all down because because one of the theories with all this is that weather has a lot to do with with the activity as well. So I'm forever doing that. So I mean, when I go home, I got a pile of stuff like this, that I've got to go through. But I mean, it's nice to be that way because, like you say, you do have you're able to have the correlation when something does occur.
So with weather, what do you find? Is it lunar? Is it what are you looking for with the weather?
Just temperature variations, like it's like anything else. It's like ghosts are supposed to cool a room down, you know. And if we have a weather monitor in there, and say something happens and somebody gets touched or something, and like you say with the data logger, you see that temperature has dropped in that room, or the humidity goes up. I found that sometimes the humidity goes up as well,
Hmm.
so you can track all that down and then figure it
Yeah,
all out.
yeah,
So it's a
yeah,
matter of watching all that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I think that's anytime you really, because if you're going to be there and you have the equipment, run it
Hmm.
and just make sure you know how to read it, and that's really the most we can do.
Hmm.
Um, we're all sort of just figuring it out. No one really
Hmm.
has an answer of this is exactly what you need to do in every
Right.
situation.
Right.
So, measuring the environmental variables that are going on, weather, humidity, lighting, all that stuff is temperature, all that stuff is
Hmm.
um, good. It's great.
And the other thing that teams have to remember when they go out too is you might have gone out to do your preliminary investigation during the day. You got your
Mhm.
EMF readings, But it's not going to be like that the night you get there because there's different things turned on in the house that people are
Yeah.
using. So you have to
Hmm.
go back through and redo all that
Yeah.
as well to keep an eye on it.
Yeah. Yeah, you gotta be thorough. You gotta get your baseline readings. You gotta do all these types of things. So it's I think there's, like I said, there's two types: people who are going in for the experience and people who are going
Mm-hmm.
in more, data objective based type stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
they're both great. One is a little bit less labor intensive for sure.
Yeah,
If you're going in for an experience, you don't have to review the data or watch all
right.
the whatevers for 8 hours.
And there's people that do that. I mean, more power to them. They do it.
Yeah.
My goal is to go out and help the client. If the client has this thing going on in their house that they want to know more about it or whatever else. But that's what we do. We're out to help. And, I had a real good friend who passed away who said exactly essentially what you're saying now, is that she says, I've been doing this for 30 years. She says there's no experts in this field. If
Yeah.
anybody comes through and says they're an expert, they're not. Because my book would be different from your book. His book would be different from another guy's book. We're
Yeah.
all here to research and try to put this stuff together to make sense out of it.
Yeah. And I think that goes for both sides too. The materialistic or the skeptical
Mm-hmm.
side of it will tell you
Mm-hmm.
they have all the answers, but in theory, they really don't.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just trying to figure it all out as well. So we're all kind of
Mm-hmm.
working towards the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, doesn't feel like that a lot. It feels like there's a lot of contention going
Mm-hmm.
on. But yeah, it's I expert is a weird term because there are people who know all the past research and know what's
Mm-hmm.
been done and read a lot. So they're definitely knowledgeable about
Mm-hmm.
what's happening, and I think knowledge kind of is equated to an expert. But
Mm-hmm.
sometimes knowledge is just knowledge. It's just having a background and knowing what the history is.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't necessarily mean if I have a lot of knowledge about ghosts and parapsychology and research articles that I'm an expert in it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's why we have conversations like this, because you have a certain set of knowledge and
Mm-hmm.
expertise, if you want to think about it like that. I have a certain set of knowledge about things. So you just have these conversations and you exchange knowledge. And when you exchange knowledge, you just gain more knowledge, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that's really what these conversations are about. It's probably what your podcast is about. Just
Mm-hmm.
exchanging knowledge and learning more about this phenomenon.
Right.
And
Right.
that's why we're here. That's why we're having conversations about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not so much who's right, who's wrong, because there's no right or wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I can say I saw a ghost, and a skeptic could say no, you didn't. Well,
Mm-hmm.
how do we prove? You know what I'm saying? We're just at
That's
a
true.
standstill.
Well, it's like teams that go out and charge for going out. You can't charge for something you can't really prove.
Yeah. Hmm.
And I mean, more like I said, more power to them if they get away with it or whatever. But we've always been what I call a poor team because it's donations or whatever. But you can't if I can't tell you for sure that what knocked the table or knocked something off the table was a ghost.
Yeah, exactly. You're going in and you're utilizing your knowledge and
Mm-hmm.
sharing it with others. That's really what it's about. Um, so you can't definitively say that a ghost knocks something off, or it's recurrent spontaneous psychokinesis, or it's
Mm-hmm.
um, the wind. Yeah, you just can't. Um, and that's why this field is so varied. You have people who um, are just getting into it, and you
Mm-hmm.
have people who've been doing it for 30 years, and they kind of have the same answers. They don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't
That's
really see
true.
that in a lot of fields. You walk into
Right.
like medicine and a surgeon, a first year surgeon knows a lot less than a surgeon who's been doing it for 30 years. And there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
facts and things that they know. But with this profession, it's like, well, no one really has the answers. So the person who just walks in may have some information or knowledge or looking at it from a different perspective that may help the person who's been here for 30 years. So you don't get that sort of hierarchy you find in a lot of professions.
Absolutely. Now, looking at this from a mental point of view, because for your studies, is there any time when you found that maybe that the person was just seeing things because they were having mental issues, or
Mhm.
maybe issues in their home. You know what I mean? Stress issues or anything like that.
Yeah, uh, I see this a lot. I will get now I want to say text messages, but there sometimes I'll get exchanges with people
Mhm.
who are ghost hunters like yourself,
Mhm.
who are sort of entangled in a situation where they've come across somebody who is unfortunately not doing well, whether that's schizophrenia or delusional disorder or mania or something along those lines, where everything is a ghost. I
Mhm.
walk in the house. If the light twitches, it's a ghost. If the wind blew, it's a ghost. Um, you know, phone rings, it's a ghost. So then that's when it goes from being, ghostly experiences to more sort of like delusional type thinking.
Mhm.
And they may need a little bit of an evaluation to go with that. You know, However, from my experience, most people who have ghostly encounters are not suffering from schizophrenia or delusional disorder or anything like that. I've talked to hundreds, if not thousands, of people who've had ghostly encounters. Me personally, and I've never had an indication that any of them have been psychotic, more or
Mhm.
less.
Mhm.
Sometimes, like I said, I'll get these texts or something saying, "Hey, this is what happened," and I would just say, "Well, it sounds like that's not. That sounds a little bit more mental health related, and here's what you can do." Um,
Mhm.
but from my experience, if someone sees a ghost, they're not crazy. Millions of people have ghostly encounters a year. It's been
Right.
going on for this, thousands of years. So that's not a indication of a mental illness. I think
Mhm.
40. I can't remember what the numbers are now because they kind of fluctuate and change, but I think it's like 30 to 40% of Americans have reported a ghostly encounter or believe houses could be haunted. So that's almost
Mhm.
50% of the population.
Do you look for stuff, like if you go out, or when you're doing research? Because I know there was a lot of stuff that came out about these new smart meters
Oh,
and how the
what?
EMF was so strong off these smart meters that people were hallucinating.
What's a smart meter? I actually don't know what that is.
It's like for your electric company. You have your meter for your electricity,
Oh,
and they came
oh,
out and invented these smart meters, and people have been asking the companies to take them out and remove them because they're hallucinating and stuff in their houses.
oh! I didn't hear that.
Yeah.
Uh-uh. I know. So milligauss,
Mhm.
everything gives off milligauss with electricity, right? So, uh,
Mhm.
your computer to your microwave to your TV to everything gives off milligauss. Your fuse box gives off a lot of milligauss.
Right. Oh yeah.
So uh, you don't really want to be sleeping next to your fuse box because you're probably
Mhm.
going to have some sort of negative consequences to that. Um, but the research in the EMFs and ghostly encounters is kind of erratic. So sometimes you'll see research that says high levels of EMF are going to cause you to see ghosts or have
Mhm.
these negative experiences. Other people will say it's not high, it's low levels that are fluctuating, so they're rapid or complex. And then there's other research that says, well, there's no EMFs in this house and people are still seeing ghosts. So it's all over the place. There's no
Mhm.
consistency to it. We wrote an article that I was a co-author on called "Things That Go Bump in the Literature," and it looked
Mhm.
at the last 20 years of research into these environmental variables. One of them was EMFs, and the basic conclusion was it's so all over the place that we really don't know.
Mhm.
Um, what we do know, though, is I mean, science knows this. If you're exposed to high EMFs or high levels of magnetic fields, or I'm sorry, high milligauss of electric EMFs, then you're going to have some repercussions from it. So
Mhm.
I don't know much about these smart meters, but if they're giving off high milligauss for extended periods of time and people are around it, I could imagine it could have detriment. There's some people who are just really, really sensitive to EMFs
Mhm.
more than the general population who just seem to have more negative symptoms or physical symptoms related to it,
Mm-hmm.
whereas the general population doesn't even feel it. They call these people sort of environmentally sensitive, or I think they call them electrosensitives.
Mm-hmm.
These people super sensitive to EMFs, and more or less these types of people have more ghostly experiences too. Oddly enough.
I've heard of a study too on sound waves. Where lower level sound waves will cause people to hallucinate like that. Which kind of, when you think about it, and you look at animals, you look at dogs. The dog whistle, you got that with the lower level sound wave. We
Yeah.
don't hear that.
No.
But these lower level sound waves are essentially things we don't hear. But if they're in your house or whatever, they will cause hallucinations as well. So I've been trying to do some research into that. Have you heard about that?
Yeah, yeah. That's the another term is infrasound. That's kind of what that is,
Okay, infrasound.
and infrasound is just below the decibels that we can hear.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of books that have been written on it. There's one book called Paraacoustics by Steve Parsons, which is a really good book if you're interested in how sound waves kind of impact us and
Mm-hmm.
how that relates to ghostly encounters.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but there's a lot of research into that too. That started in, I want to say, the early 2000s. There was a laboratory, I think it had a fan in it. And this laboratory was noted to be haunted. And what they found was uh, this fan that was running in this laboratory was giving off infrasound, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it was low level sound that people don't know they're hearing, but they still hear it. And what they found was this infrasound was actually impacting people to the point where their like eyes were shaking, and there might have been some hallucinations, and they were just sort of uh, uh, impacted by it. And they kind of correlated this fan and the infrasound to having ghostly encounters, and that's what
Mm-hmm.
started it or ballooned the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then they were doing studies, every year or so about it. But that's just like EMFs. That's a little erratic as well. It's
Mm-hmm.
tough to really measure infrasound, in a small room compared to a bigger room. If you move from one room to another,
Mm-hmm.
it's these environmental variables are kind of difficult to really pin down. There was one research project it was called the Haunt Project, and this um, professor in I think the UK built this room, and in the room it had a person would walk in the room and they would get hit with like infrasound, they would get hit with like EMFs, and they asked the people after they left whether they had a ghostly experience or not. And what they found basically was um, there was some correlation between some of these infrasounds and EMFs, but it wasn't for
Mm-hmm.
everybody. Wasn't consistent. I don't think it was this statistically significant either. So they
Mm-hmm.
kind of said, well, again, it's erratic. We don't know. Recent research says that it's not really. So we all think with ghosts, I was just in a right place at the right time. So I had a
Mm-hmm.
ghostly experience a couple years ago, and it's like, oh, I was just at the right place at the right time. This ghost just showed up, randomly, and I just happened to be there. And we think with like EMFs and those types of things, everybody who walks in is going to be impacted the same way.
Right.
You know,
Right.
that's not true. So it's not right place at the right time. It's the right person in the right setting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's what research really says now.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to have uh, certain psychological variables or a certain type of person who's sensitive to the environment in the right place, in the
Mm-hmm.
right environment. And that's really the equation that gets you the ghostly experience. Right
Mm-hmm.
person, right time. No. Right person, right setting. Yes. That's how I
Mm-hmm.
kind of look at it.
Mm-hmm. We had a case with a older woman who was living in an apartment, and she was seeing things and hearing things at night. The ghosts would crawl into bed with her. All this stuff was going on. We get
Mm.
in there, and there's a lot of talk about EMF cages. Where people
Oh,
don't realize they're living in a cage. This was a cage. She was in the bottom floor, center apartment. All the apartments were around her, so all the wiring was running all over. And I had to show her, with the EMF meter. I said, look, you're off the charts here. When you sit on this couch, it's crazy. So, it's hard to tell somebody to say, look, you're sensitive to this. Maybe you should move. Pack your stuff up and move. And she kind of looked at me real funny. And you know what? She moved. Hasn't had one problem.
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
because she was so sensitive, and that was that what you call the EMF cage.
Yeah. Yeah. She was surrounded by it. So
Mhm.
a sensitive person in that situation is going to have
Mhm.
these types of encounters. There's
Mhm.
some people who just are oblivious to it. It doesn't affect them, and
Yeah.
they probably wouldn't have those experiences. So
Mhm.
these are all interesting little cases when we think about it.
Mhm.
So that's good that you were able to identify, hey, this is what's going on. If you have to address this, and if it might be beneficial to address this and
Mhm.
see if things get better, right?
Mhm. Right.
That's
Right.
that's a good piece of information to give
But that was
somebody.
the thing, because she would get tired of being inundated, so she would go stay at hotels. Right? There was no problem at the hotel, and so you start to think when you're on location investigating, the wheels start to turn. You're thinking, okay, if she's not having problems at the hotels, what's going on here? So you have to go back and look through all that stuff.
Yeah, but some people would go, "Oh, it's just that place is haunted and the hotel is not haunted too, right?"
Right. Right. There's many
They say,
people that
"Oh,
will do
well,
that.
a ghost can't leave a apartment. I mean,
Yeah.
that's unheard of."
Yeah.
But ghosts could go everywhere. If ghosts exist, they could probably go anywhere they want to go. They're not
Right.
confined to a little area.
Right.
But anyway, but you're right though. Your perspective was probably more helpful for her. But another team
Mhm.
would be like, "Oh, this place is just super haunted," and
Yeah.
no matter who's going to be here doing this. So, um, I think that's a great example because they did research way back in the '80s with Michael Persinger, who was a
Mhm.
neurologist, and he would do research in places and found that an alarm clock was giving off very fluctuating
Oh
complex
yeah,
EMF
that
fields.
too.
And once they took the alarm clock away, the person got better. Or
Mhm.
they put him in a lab and put this motorcycle helmet on him and shot him with EMFs more or less, and then they were able to recreate the experiences they were having at their house, which had
Mhm.
fluctuating EMFs. So that's really where the EMF really started, was in the '80s with Michael Persinger, and then
Mhm.
people took that out into the field with the EMFs and the clocks, and then that morphed
Right.
into ghosts or fluctuating EMFs, and
Mhm.
and then we're here where we are today.
Mhm.
So there's this evolution of how electromagnetic fields have really been um, in the field as long as I could remember, at least
Mhm.
from my modern day
Mhm.
um, viewpoint of ghost research and hunting.
Well, I do have a psychologist on staff.
Oh, that's good.
For these cases. It's taken years. It's one of those things where we started out like anybody else. Let's go find a ghost. At these old hotels, and then we gravitated more into residentials. And then as I got in there, I'm a newspaper reporter. It's what I do. I look at people. I study people, and I got to the point where I thought, you know what? I want to provide a service for people. I don't want to just go out here and say, hot dog, you got a ghost, blah, 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 blah. I want to be able to help them. So
Yep.
I searched for different professionals to come onto my team.
Yeah.
So we could actually provide that proper service.
Yeah. And most cases, when it comes to, we talked about poltergeist and
Yeah.
RSPK before.
Yeah.
Um, Usually, if the individual, the target person, gets some type of psychological intervention,
Mhm.
the phenomenon decrease and eventually
Mhm.
stop,
Mhm.
because it's the psychological dynamics or the internal struggles that are causing the poltergeisty RSPK stuff. And once those things calm down, that stuff tends to go away.
Mhm.
So, this phenomenon that happens around us externally is internal.
Mhm.
So, smudging, um, uh, doing all these other types of things probably wouldn't make it better. And if it did, it would only be temporary because, people, that's that placebo thing where they start feeling
Right.
better because someone came in and smudged the house. That's not
Right.
in all cases. I don't want to discount smudging at all,
Right. Right.
or
Right.
alternative ways to do that. But
Mhm.
we'd get a sense of relief that, oh, something's been done, whether it's a priest putting holy water on,
Mhm.
and maybe it's just our internal coping skill, or our internal struggle just decreases a little bit. We feel better
Mhm.
placebo wise, and then the phenomenon goes away, but it'll come
Right.
back.
Right.
Whereas if you get long term counseling, you're better able to manage the internal struggle and it never
Mhm.
comes back.
Mhm.
So there's
Mhm.
different viewpoints on that. So if if you have someone who believes that RSPK or poltergeist is a result of internal stuff, then
Mhm.
the prescription is counseling. If you have someone who thinks it's external, then the
Mhm.
prescription is more like smudging or exorcisms or things like
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
And I think that's what you're right. Like your psychologist would come in handy because they might
Mhm.
be able to help the person. If it doesn't get better, maybe you try out different alternative things to sort of ease
Mhm.
whatever's going on.
Do you think the TV shows have influenced people in what they experience?
Yes, 100%. And we're seeing this more now with negative entities or demons
Yes.
and these types of things.
Yes.
Uh,
Absolutely.
uh, I think um, 20, 30 years ago, ghosts were known as sort of these things that were around. Everyone knew that they existed. The phenomenon happened. We kind of dealt with it, got a little scared, but kind of moved on with our lives. And now it's, the demonic entity, the negative spirit, the nefarious thing is in our house and it's going to
Mhm.
destroy us and attach itself to us. And so the narrative has really moved. And I think that's the result sometimes of ghost hunting shows. So what was entertaining and engaging at the start got boring. So then they
Mhm.
have to keep upping it a little bit,
Right.
um,
Right.
and making it more severe or intense, and playing into the narratives a little bit more. Um, now, I feel as if sometimes it could really take over a person's life. So you have to really be careful when you start talking about negative stuff and demons.
Mhm.
And um, I, I I I don't know how the shows kind of get away from stuff like that. I think you could
Right.
really do a lot of psychological damage to people if you tell them
Mhm.
there's a demon in the house. To
Right.
to say that and then just disappear, to me, is not a good. I don't know.
Mhm.
Morally, it's probably feels icky.
Mhm. Because the reason why I mention that is because I know a lot of the calls that we get, and people don't want us to come out and investigate. They want us to cleanse the house of the
Okay.
evil that's there, and we're getting a lot of that. And it's hard to get across to them because they get that idea in their head because they're seeing that stuff on TV, and it's hard to get the information to them saying, look, we don't know what you're dealing with over there. We have to go in and take a look and see what's going on before we can do anything about it. But it's really hard sometimes to convince people.
Yeah, yeah. Once they have their mind made up, it's hard to change people's minds.
Hmm.
Uh, I don't do residential cases. I don't go into people's houses, more or less, unless
Hmm.
I personally know them.
Hmm.
Um, I stick to more, um, I guess, paranormal tourism places, things like
Sure.
that, where there's supposedly haunted activity going on. Because I
Hmm.
think it's a complex mess. It's more or
Yes.
less, and there's so many things you got to deal with: dynamics, family dynamics,
Hmm.
psychological dynamics, logistical stuff. There's probably houses you walk in where you can't even move sometimes because there's so much stuff hanging around. And
Hmm.
so I think it's a residential is a tough thing to do on a consistent basis for you and your team, probably.
It's a huge responsibility
Yeah.
because, like you say, you're dealing with psychological stuff. You're dealing with someone's well-being. In the
Yeah.
in the house, you got to sort through it. Which is the other. Again, which is the reason why I ended up revamping my team and bringing in professional people on my team so that so that we could do that. I've got nurses on my team, so that if they're on medications, we could look at the medications that people are taking and things like that. Because I mean, it's very serious to do it. It's like what I do with the newspaper. You write an article about somebody. If the information's wrong, people tend to remember the wrong information more than they remember the right information. And if we turn around and put a correction on page A2 that's like this big, I mean, no one's
That's
going to
right.
see it anyway, So you have to
Yeah.
be really, really careful. It's a huge responsibility.
Yeah. Going in and doing you're right. It's a huge responsibility, and I wouldn't even know where to start with situations like that.
Hmm.
Um, there's all kinds of I know I've read articles on ethics of ghost hunting and guidelines to ghost hunting. I know the Society for Psychical Research, I think, puts a little booklet out on
Yes.
guidelines to investigations and things like that. So those probably are helpful, but once you're in there and you encounter something that seems awkward or icky,
Hmm.
it's difficult to deal with that in the moment, I would imagine.
Hmm.
So I give you a lot
Brandon,
of credit for that.
it's been fun. What's next for you?
Oh, I don't know. We'll see where the wind takes me. I'm always writing. I always got writing projects going on. If
Hmm.
people are interested, they can follow me at Haunted Theories on Facebook and X, and I have a website, Haunted Theories. I'm working on a book right now. I'm always working on these articles for peer review journal
Hmm.
articles. So I'll have a couple of those coming out soon. But Haunted Theories is the Facebook, and the website is the best way to kind of keep tabs on me.
Okay. How can people find you? I guess Facebook, right? We just get
Yeah, that's really the
okay.
best
Okay.
way. You could, if you, I'm on Facebook. I'm the
Hmm.
only. I think I'm the only Brandon Massullo in the world. So if you type my name in, you will get me. I'm not Joe Smith or anything like that. You'll find
Right.
you'll find me. So I always encourage people if you can reach out. I usually respond pretty quickly.
Hmm.
Um, so and I do have if you're interested in some of my thoughts, I have a book called The Ghost Studies, which is available on Amazon.
Okay.
Um, yeah.
Cool. Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. I learned so
Oh,
much. I love talking with researchers like you. I love it because
oh, thank you.
it only adds to what I know. On top of what we do as well. It helps my team. So I
Yeah, it's
really
about a
appreciate it.
conversation.
Yeah.
Conversations, increasing knowledge. I learned some things from you as far as smart meters
Hmm.
and all this
Hmm.
other stuff too. I got to look into that.
There you go. Okay. Well, thank you very much, and have a great weekend.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Bye
All right.
bye.
All right.
All right, guys, that was great. Maybe we'll get him back on another time to talk more about this stuff. I could sit there all night and talk about this stuff. Go round and round with people. I used to love to pick the brains of people like my friend Gloria Young, who, like I said, had been around for a long time. John Zaffis, people like that. It's just fun to pick the brains and see what what their studies give you. Just like what we're doing on Project Gutenberg on Sunday when we're reading those books. We are reading the stuff from a lot of the investigation stuff from the 1800s. From that I can't say it, Psychical Research Group. So we are reading that stuff. Okay, tomorrow, Medium Nancy Matz is going to be here. It's Casual Friday, so we're going to have our usual giggles and laughs and all that. And her question is, why did your soul choose your life? So we're going to find out. I think what happened with mine, the way mine chose my life, was they were at a party and they had drank, had one too many. That's how I got my life. But anyway, I always thought my guardian angels and everything were alcoholics. I'll tell you. But anyway, I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. I really appreciate it. We had a real nice chat room, and tomorrow again, 6:30 p.m. Pacific. I will have our store, the California Haunt store, will be open. It's called the Boo Crew Store, so I'll have links up to that on Facebook tonight, so you guys can check out some of our items. And there's going to be stuff coming out weekly, of some merch to help keep California Haunts going. And as you can tell, the Patreon.com is down there. If you haven't checked out our Patreon yet, come on over. And again, like I mentioned earlier, we are going to be doing a pre-recorded interview tomorrow, and those pre-recorded interviews do go over the Patreon automatically for the Patreon members, and they usually don't air for 1 or 2 weeks afterwards. The new show that we're going to be doing on the weekend is coming together. I've just done the art for it, And so that's coming together, and I have some people that we're going to be interviewing. So I'm really excited. Well, not so much interview, but I'm going to be interviewing to get their information to tell those dark stories, to tell those ghost stories. So that'll be coming along very, very soon here. So for everybody at the Patreon, just sit tight. It's coming, and getting closer, ever closer, ever closer. All right, guys, I will see you guys tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. Pacific. I want you guys to have a great night and relax, and as I always close with, unpleasant dreams.